Hey everyone, how's it going? Thanks so much for tuning in. In today's video, we have the awesome opportunity to take an in-depth look at the Polaris Slingshot Grand Touring. I'm sure a lot of you by now already know what a slingshot is, but just in case you don't, it technically falls under the motorcycle category, but the vast majority of states out there classify it as an autocycle. So you don't need a special motorcycle endorsement on your license to be able to drive it, which is super cool. There's only a handful of states like way up north that still require that special endorsement, but Polaris actually has a link on their website so you can see if your state falls under that category. But it's rear-wheel drive, obviously, 3 wheels, 4-cylinder up front, 5-speed manual. This thing is rad. The whole point of this video is to take a deep dive into the Slingshot. We'll start it up, get some sound clips, take it for a thorough drive. I'll talk about the different trim levels, pricing, features, and all of that good stuff. And, of course, all of the unique aspects throughout the interior as well as exterior. This video is brought to you guys in part by the Cove Commuter. It's a portable Bluetooth speaker that can pair to smartphones, tablets, and computers at a pretty impressive range too, distances at least 30 feet without an interruption in sound. I've actually had this particular one for about 6 months now and it's been awesome. I use it around the shop, at family get-togethers, even in the Jimmy until I get around to finally putting in that new sound system. It's surprisingly powerful considering its size and it lasts up to 8 hours on a full charge. It's also compact enough to fit in a cup holder. If you'd like to give the Cove Commuter a try for yourself, it really is a no-brainer because they're offering a 65% discount on this thing using the code Kyle65, so follow the link in the description box below. Thank you guys so much for the support. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and hop on in, start her up, and let her run. The Slingshot's offered in 4 trim levels: S, SL, SLR, and Grand Touring. The S starts at $20,999, while the Grand Touring on the other end of the spectrum starts at $30,999. I'll talk about pricing differences and specific features and stuff between the trim levels in just a moment, but the Grand Touring is certainly geared more towards comfort. You have a larger windscreen, and this full roof structure that they call the sling shade. This is sweet. It's got these gull-wing-like doors, so you pull them up. There's some magnets right there that hold it in place as you pull it down, and a latch to fully secure it once you're all situated. But there's a grab handle right there to make pulling it down a little easier, and as you can see, when you open it, it stays there, so it makes ingress and egress a lot easier. You also get these really nice diamond quilted seats. They have a softer material than the rest of the Slingshots, as well as more padding, so again, more for comfort. It's actually really awesome how Polaris has structured the Slingshot lineup. For example, if you wanted some of the performance extras that you would typically get on the SLR, but if you wanted the comfort and convenience of the Grand Touring, you can pick options a la carte and make your dream package basically. On the other end of the spectrum, if you wanted a base Slingshot S, but wanted the Sling Shade, the roof that goes over the top, you can do that too. It's basically whatever you want. All right, let's go ahead and climb aboard. The easiest way I have found to get in is to first take my right leg, bring it over and underneath the steering wheel, slide across the edge, and just kind of drop in place. Then I can bring my left leg over, and we're good to go. There's 3-point safety belts just like a regular car, but of course there are no airbags. Because this is what it is, a full face helmet is recommended to be used at all times. The state requirements actually vary, but it's better to be safe than sorry. Just in case you were wondering, this roof is not really a structural member of the chassis. It's not going to provide additional rollover protection. There are, however, pretty stout roll bars behind the seats, and that's shared with the regular Slingshots. To start, first insert the key and turn the power on. Then put your foot on the clutch and hit the red illuminated button in the console to go. Grand Touring has all of these extra fancy bits and creature comforts, but everything that you would need to make a fun car, motorcycle, whatever you want to call it, is standard equipment even on the base model, which is awesome. For example, you have rack and pinion steering. It's electric power assisted. It takes just a hair over 3 turns to lock, but it feels really nice. You have ABS, electronic stability control, and most importantly, a standard 5-speed manual transmission. The gauges are LED backlit, and on the left side there's a small digital display with a driver's information system, trip computer, fuel data, outside temperature. The base doesn't even have a radio, let alone this display. It's just a big open storage cubby. This is the Slingshot ride command system, and it comes standard on the SL and above. Now, trim levels aside, audio and navigation are 2 separate features. Now, if you get the ride command display, it has the driver's information system in here as well. You have a digital speed readout, tachometer, a bunch of other things, but this one obviously has audio. It's actually a 200-watt Rockford Fosgate audio system. There's 2, I believe, 6.5-inch mid basses, one here, one on the other side, and tweeters up in the top. But this is a nice system. If you get navigation, you just get the added convenience of, well, having navigation. You can integrate smartphone, you got hands-free Bluetooth technology. Here's your audio, volume controls right there. And what's even more cool, the entire interior of the Slingshot is waterproof, including this. So you can leave this outside and not worry about all of this getting messed up. And if it's a colder day and you wanted to wear gloves, this system can be fully operated with using gloves. Pinching, swiping, all of that typical stuff. It's a nice setup. Now let's hop back out for a moment and talk about the powertrain. The hood is a reverse hinged clamshell design. To open it, there's a little release catch that you have to first undo. It sits in between these 2 lights. Push it down. With it released, there's a reinforced handle right underneath here. Grab it, pull up and towards you. And just kind of let it down gently. After you do all that, you're left with this. Pretty cool, right? Well, underneath the hood, there's a 2.4-liter naturally aspirated 4-cylinder. It's a GM Ecotech motor. Makes 173 horsepower at 6,200 RPM and 166 pound-feet of torque at 4,700 RPM. The Slingshot is super easy to service because everything is super easy to get to. I love how you can see the inner workings of everything. You got the suspension right there. You can see a portion of the tubular structure as it carries on into the cabin area. The exhaust comes out straight down, so it's loud, but it sounds really good, as you'll hear on the road in just a moment. The intake is a ram air or cold air type design. You have this low restriction filter that's bolted up front so it doesn't move anywhere, and you have a big opening in the front of the clamshell that's constantly feeding like direct cold air to this thing. The radiator sits right below it. You have electric fans, and of course, easy access to all of the headlight bulbs. The front suspension is an independent double wishbone design. There's a sway bar in front and a combination spring strut shock absorber right here. There's the electric motor for the power steering. The fuel tank filler neck is back here. There's a little twist off cap. Total capacity is 9.77 gallons, and 91 octane fuel is recommended for best performance. There's no official MPG ratings that I'm aware of, but in the time that I've had it, it's been averaging around 25.8 miles per gallon. You can also see your instant miles per gallon off to the right. I've been driving it mostly in the city, some in the country, mostly spirited driving, little on the hard side, about 15 minutes on the highway one time, so not too bad all things considered. Probably driving it normally might be a little bit better. Also, despite how it may look, this is not a step. Do not step on it. I think it's about time to see how this thing hits the road. 173 horsepower might not sound like a lot, but in something that weighs 1,749 pounds, On that note, between the wind and the road noise, you couldn't hear me one bit. Of course, that helmet wasn't helping either, so let's just do a little voiceover. As you would expect, the Slingshot is an amazingly good time. It's such a weird combination between traditional sports car and motorcycle, but one thing's for sure, it's an experience that you will not soon forget. Even if you can't afford to buy one of these outright, because let's face it, it is a lot of money to spend on what's essentially a toy, there are a lot of opportunities to rent these as well. You see them a lot of times at the beach, but depending on what city you live in, you could probably snag one locally as well. There are some really fun three-wheeled vehicles out there, but as a whole package, I think the Slingshot is one of, if not the most well-sorted of the bunch. It offers a lot of really nice standard equipment, again, like ABS, power steering, traction control, just a lot of really good safety things. What's also really nice, even though it is classified as an autocycle or a motorcycle or whatever, it's still very familiar if you've never had experience with that genre of vehicle before. When you climb in, the steering wheel, the shifter, the seating position, it's all very good. In the Grand Touring, again, it's really comfortable, but everything is within easy reach, it's easy to understand, and when you're driving it around the road, it doesn't feel all that different from a regular car. Of course, you're sitting basically on the ground, and if you reach out just far enough, you can drag your hand on the ground, which don't do, but you can. It's just an interesting experience to have everything all open, no heat and air conditioning, a tiny little windshield, but you got that helmet, you're flying through the countryside. Again, it's just a really cool experience. That being said, driving the Slingshot does take some time to get used to if you've never been in something like this before, because you have a wide front track and the single rear wheel, so you have some elements of a sports car, some elements of a motorcycle. That comes with some inherent limitations, and as long as you understand those limitations and work within that, space, you'll be in good shape, and the Slingshot will reward you time and time again. If you push it beyond the limits, it will let go. That rear wheel only has so much traction. Now, if you're wanting to go harder, to get more of the performance and stuff, then I suggest getting that forged wheel option that I mentioned earlier, because you have that wider 305 tire in the rear, which is going to give you more traction. The suspension is firm and the chassis is really responsive. This thing will dart wherever you point it, but the only thing that I would change is the steering. I think in this case a manual rack and pinion setup would actually be more appropriate. The powered setup is a nice convenience feature. It's easy to maneuver, especially at low speeds, but when you're out on the road, especially in the twisties, it doesn't give you a whole lot of feel. It's not a very rewarding steering setup, and I think being able to have the steering fully in control, it's a no-brainer. It would make it so much more fun than it already is. And because it is super lightweight, I don't think it would make it all that hard to steer at low speeds. It'd be interesting to see. Everything else from the throttle response to the feel of the clutch is just about perfect. The shifter feel is also wonderful. It's so precise, it almost feels like an old school gated shifter. Just click, click, click as you row through. Very satisfying. These wheels are shared between the SL and the Grand Touring. The base S has a less fancier set. These obviously have the matte black painted pockets and the machined face. The SLR actually receives a special set of forged wheels that are all matte black. Of course, with the a la carte options that I mentioned earlier, if you wanted the SLR's forged wheels on the Grand Touring, it's just a matter of checking that options box. But these wheels are cast aluminum, measuring 18 by 7.5 inches in front with 225/45 tires, and 20 by 9 inches in the rear with 255/35 tires. Now, if you go for those forged wheels, you not only get the benefit of a little bit of a reduced unsprung weight, but you also get a wider rear wheel and a wider 305/30 tire. As far as stopping power, the Slingshot has disc brakes spanning 11.7 inches each. Up front you have twin piston calipers and single piston calipers in the rear. The discs are internally ventilated, and just like the front, back here you have stainless steel braided brake lines. While these rotors are cast iron, the SLR actually has an upgraded two-piece composite setup that reduces unsprung weight. Again, if you wanted the upgraded braking setup here, all you gotta do is check that options box. The whole rear suspension setup just fascinates me. This isn't the first vehicle of its kind that I've driven, but just think about it. Traditional car engine and transmission, some sort of converter drive or whatever going on in there to make it a belt-driven setup. You have this swing arm that supports everything going this way. There's a special guard that goes over the belt. This fender is actually an optional feature, but it's standard on the Grand Touring, of course. And you have that big shock absorber. Speaking of shocks, if you didn't want to stick with the standard setup, they also offer a set of adjustable Bilsteins for a bit of extra performance. If you didn't already notice all of the pops of color, the Grand Touring, as well as the SLR, also has color-matched suspension components. So like the wishbones up front, the swing arm in the rear, it's color-matched to all of these like little white accents and stuff. Pretty cool touch. The Slingshot looks wicked, especially in this metallic black paint. It rides on a 105-inch wheelbase and has a front track width of 69.1 inches. I also really like how there's almost no curvy aspects to the exterior. It's all very technical, sharp-edged, and there's a lot of really cool detailing, such as these mirrors, for example. Taking a closer look at the roofline, as the sling shade extends back, there's actually little pieces that go past the roll bars into little points. It's a pretty neat detail. There's a big fin right here with a third brake light on top, 3D Slingshot logos to the sides, and huge LED taillights. All of the rear lighting is LED, including the license plate light. There's a reverse light on the left-hand side, and then your brake lights on the right side. We'll take a quick walk down the passenger side. Not a whole lot going on down in front of the rear wheel because you're basically just sitting in a big tub. There's little vented portions of the sling shade towards the rear. Small little windows right there that are actually removable. You have the Grand Touring logo up front. That enlarged windscreen, which again, very sharp-edged, very technical. Love it. And of course, the pièce de résistance, this ridiculously angry front end. That's awesome. From what I've been able to tell, the headlights seem to come on automatically when you first start the Slingshot. They're projector halogen bulbs, both low and high beams. And just word to the wise, it is pretty low down in the front. You're going to want to be careful with those winged extensions so you don't clip one accidentally. By now, I think I've done a pretty good job expressing just how customizable the Slingshot is, but there are so many color options for this. Not just for the main body color, but obviously these accent pieces. You can do interior accents like, color matched center consoles and whatnot. Now let's take a deeper dive into the interior. It's waterproof, so if it gets wet, you don't have to worry about it. In fact, if it gets super dirty, you can spray it out because there's drain holes in the bottom so the water can all get out. Again, being that the Grand Touring is the fanciest of the bunch, you have these super comfortable diamond quilted seats. The SLR has a more aggressive sport seat. The SL is a little simpler with its seat design, but it has a two-tone color. And then you have the standard model. From the passenger's perspective, the ride command system is super easy to reach. There's not a whole lot going on, but it's pretty decent legroom overall. And there's a locking glove box. Pretty good size too. Even though you have the sling shade, it's still pretty good headroom too. Close it. I'm 5'10" and just sitting here, I have a ton of extra space. Even with a helmet, I don't even come close to hitting the roof. Both seats are adjustable for sliding and recline. If you bring the backrest forward, you also get access to 2 lockable storage compartments that house your helmets. So that's convenient. And here's one final look at the interior from the driver's perspective. Your turn signal, high beam switch is off to the left. You also have cruise control. I think I forgot to mention that earlier. Kind of a surprising feature to have. Across the dash, down the center console, you have your hazard and traction control switch down below there. On the back, you have your parking brake and 2 cup holders. Well, that's gonna just about wrap it up for this video, but before I close it out, let's go ahead and see as she sounds. That's a wrap, guys. Let's go ahead and shut her down. Well, everyone, I hope you enjoyed the in-depth look at the Polaris Slingshot Grand Touring. This video was a lot of fun put together. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to leave a like below. It really helps out. And if you haven't subscribed already, consider doing so, because there's always a lot more where that came from, not just with reviews, but projects as well. I'm gonna go ahead and get on out of here, guys, so I'll see you on the next one. Take care.